Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 53. Hello, True Health seekers, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. I have a fantastic guest coming up whose book has sold over 500,000 copies and has spent 97 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list. But before we talk about our author and our guest today, I wanted to let you know about something really exciting for you, the listener. My husband told me the other day, he's like, let's do something more to create a community to support our listeners. And so we created a Facebook group. It's called Learn True Health. You can type in Learn True Health in Facebook, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/group and you will find our Facebook group. Please join it. It is here for you, to support you and to connect you with all of my past guests. I've invited all of the past guests, and I'm going to be inviting all the future guests to join the group. So if you have further questions, if you want to connect with any of the experts, any of the doctors and authors and holistic health experts that I've had on the show, you can connect with them. You can also connect with me, with other listeners. We just started this group and already people have been asking me questions and sharing with each other. It's so exciting to meet and be with like-minded people. So go ahead and type in Learn True Health in Facebook. You obviously can like our fan page, but of course go ahead and join our group. And it's here for you, our listeners. Thank you so much. And we're just so excited to continue to grow. We have been spending over 4 months now on the number one in iTunes under New and Noteworthy. So because you are listening, you're giving us 5-star rating and reviews, you're subscribing, iTunes notices that, hey, this is a great podcast, and it's kept us at number 1. So thank you so much. I'm dedicated to bringing you fantastic interviews, just like today's with Diane Sanfilippo. She is the owner and founder of Balanced Bites, a certified nutrition consultant. She wrote Practical Paleo, which is the New York Times best-selling book I told you about. She also came up with the 21-day Sugar Detox. We're going to talk a bit more about that, but the link to learn more is learntruehealth.com/sugar. I'm really, really excited about her 21-day Sugar Detox program. She's also the co-author of the Mediterranean Paleo Cookbook. In this interview, I feel like Diane shares so much. It's not just for people who want to be paleo. So if you're like, hey, paleo's not for me, I would still listen to this episode because there's so much great information about things you can shift in your lifestyle and diet and things you can think about and change and try on to increase your health, to learn true health. So enjoy the show. Well, Diane Sanfilippo is a fantastic author and just delicious cookbooks and wonderful information about going paleo. I'm so excited to have you on the show to teach us everything about the paleo diet and why your book in particular is so important for those who want to explore the paleo diet. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before you dive into teaching us more about the paleo diet and about your books, could you share your story with us? How did you become a paleo expert?
So, rewind way back years ago, I was interested in health and nutrition basically from watching an episode of the Oprah show. I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but hey, we all get a spark somewhere. And I remember hearing it was Dr. Oz at the time, had a guest spot talking about how blueberries and antioxidants in blueberries can help us prevent cancer. Something as simple as that being shared on television actually motivated me because we have lots of cancer on one side of my family. And I thought, well, if there's something I can do to be empowered to help myself in preventing that, that was just kind of a light bulb moment for me. And that's really catapulted everything I've been doing. So I, at one point in time, decided I wanted to cook for people and I wanted to create meals. And they were balanced to different nutrient needs, primarily macronutrient needs, so protein, carbs, and fat, which is where the name of my blog and business came from, Balanced Bites. I was balancing meals for people, cooking and delivering meals. And I hit a point where I was just really burning out from doing that. Everything was organic, gluten-free, super healthy stuff. And it was a lot of energy and effort. And it was really tough to earn a living doing that as well. Just kind of as a side note, if anyone listening is curious about that. But I didn't feel like I was doing what I was meant to do. I didn't feel like I was teaching people the information they needed to, you know, for themselves to be empowered to do this for themselves. I wasn't teaching them anything. I was really just doing it for them. And look, there's nothing wrong with folks ordering meals from a company that makes this stuff and helping themselves out in those times where you really need a crutch. But I want to teach people why it's important, how to do it, how to make it easy, how to make it practical, and to incorporate it into their lives, because I do believe that we need to be taking care of ourselves as much as possible. So went back to school, and this was while I had some other jobs in between, working as a graphic designer. You know, this isn't a totally linear process, but went back to school to study holistic nutrition, and was in holistic nutrition school. It's a 2-year program that I went to here in the Bay Area in Berkeley called Bauman College. And I have an undergraduate degree in business and marketing, so totally separate area of study, but this was my passion, you know, later in life. And so I studied holistic nutrition, learned about paleo about 6 months into 2 years of the program. And I had started CrossFitting, and this whole paleo thing just opened up to me. It made so much sense. It's about eating like our ancestors. And I always had this feeling that we might want to eat like our grandparents and great grandparents, but I just wasn't thinking back further to all of our ancestors in terms of the Paleolithic times. Now, of course, when we say eating paleo, we're not mimicking exactly what cavemen ate, because we can't with modern foods, but we can do the best we can to eat real, whole, nutrient-dense foods, which is really at the core what the paleo diet is all about. And so when it comes to my story with going paleo and how my health has changed, lots of folks have autoimmune conditions that have gone into remission, or they have stories of really, you know, large amounts of weight loss. None of that was my story. I honestly struggled with kind of the daily, or maybe not daily, but regularly nagging issues that a lot of us write off as normal. They're common, but they're not normal. So I would have sinus infections like every couple of months. Every time I went to the eye doctor, my prescription was getting a little stronger. Every time I went to the dentist, or almost every time I went to the dentist, there was something, whether it was a cavity or the beginnings of a cavity. And, you know, I wasn't eating junk food all the time. I was eating, you know, what I thought was a standard healthy kind of diet. And so that's really what changed for me, is I got my blood sugar regulated. I got my digestion back on track. My health, you know, internally was so much better when I changed what I was eating. And so, you know, I really learned the power of food in that way. And I was working with clients for a while, and then I started teaching seminars, which, you know, that really became more of the motivation for writing Practical Paleo, which was my first book, and just being able to reach more people than I could ever reach by traveling the country and getting in front of them, and, you know, spending time in a room for 8 hours with folks, which is really kind of how I started alongside my nutrition practice. So that was the very beginning of it. And, you know, years ago now, it's been, I don't know, I can't even think I started back in nutrition school. It was maybe 2007, something like that. So it's been quite a while.
Fantastic. Now, I like to ask guests sometimes, like, how many lives do you think you've impacted? How many people do you think you've helped? But your runway hit Practical Paleo book sold over 500,000 copies and spent a total of 97 weeks in the New York Times bestseller list. So we know you at least have impacted 500,000 lives. But you also have a fantastic podcast called the Balanced Bites podcast. Between your podcast, your blog, your several books, how many people do you think you have helped gain, further traction on their health?
I mean, who knows? How can I quantify that? Because I can't even really wrap my head around that 500,000. You know what I mean? I can't. I'm trying to picture football stadiums, and how many people is that? How many people who have the book are, you know, sharing it with friends and family? I don't know, maybe 1 million people.
It's awesome.
You know, but because it's not, you know, you don't just add up the people on, you know, who are following you on Instagram and the people who have your book. You don't just add all that up, because there's obviously lots of crossover there. So I don't know. I don't know how many, but that's my guess, maybe.
That's awesome. What are you most passionate about right now?
I'm most passionate about encouraging people around the topic of empowerment. And I think that nutrition is such a powerful way to do that, because when we see people change their health and change their entire life through food, they realize that they're capable of changing so many other things in their lives that, for me, that's just at the core of everything, because I really feel strongly about folks not being victims in their own lives or feeling like life is happening to them or they don't have choices. I really want people to feel like they're in control of their lives to the degree that we can. Of course, there are some things that happen, right? But, by and large, we have control of things and we can do things for ourselves. Even if we have a diagnosis that seems like that's all there is, people very much want to identify with the diagnosis or a health condition or disease. And even with a diagnosis, there's always something we can do to improve our own health and our own lives.
Mm-hmm. Talking about helping people become empowered, I've heard some excuses for not shifting their diet is, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money, or I'm on disability, so I can't afford. And that they think that, eating organic, it's just too expensive. So they don't change anything.
Right.
What kind of advice or what kind of, guidance do you give those who say their biggest excuse for not shifting their diet is they don't have enough money? Like, is paleo more expensive? I mean, you're buying fresh produce.
Yeah. So a couple of things here before I get into the practical side of it. I'm going to just address the mindset. And, you've kind of hit the nail on the head by saying the excuse that ... because that's really a mindset issue more than anything else, because I firmly believe that where there's a will, there's a way. When you want something badly enough and you're the type of person who realizes that it's in your power, whatever it is, you find a way. And that's the type of personality that I have. And I know that not everybody has that personality, but I do think that, somebody needs to get something done. They get it done. This is part of the deep core of human nature when something is urgent and critical to our lives. But unfortunately, our society is such that we like to throw up our hands and absolve ourselves of that responsibility a lot of the time. So that being said, from a practical aspect and the practical side of things, perfectionism is not what I'm interested in. I'm not even interested in somebody who is saying, I really don't have the money to buy organic. I don't care if you buy organic. I care that you don't buy garbage. I care that you buy real food, that you're buying meat and vegetables and eggs and fruit and things that are whole, real foods. And there are issues around food deserts and things like that. And I can't solve all of those problems personally. If I had more answers for that, I would. I think that most people who are asking us those questions are not in that situation. Most people who are asking that question, like, well, what do I do? Especially if they're listening to your podcast. If you're listening to a podcast and you feel like you don't have the money to do something, then you probably have time to be doing some more work. Like actually another job to do work to earn money. So, we can go down a whole rabbit hole here of the way I think about how people say they don't have the money to do things. But, there are obviously special circumstances and situations. But look, farmers markets are accepting food stamps. Like, you can take that to a farmer's market. You don't have to spend that at the store where there's only processed stuff available. There are other options. My team and I have been working on a budget guide that's really targeted at that community of, food stamp level. This is not just I can't afford organic. It's just something we've had in the works for a long time, and eventually we will be able to distribute that. But so there's a whole lot to unpack there. And I think it really depends on the scenario, but I address this in the updated version of Practical Paleo, where people are saying, I can't afford this. And some people want to paralyze others with paleo perfectionism. That's what I call it. And I like alliteration, clearly, but, I think that that's not really the mindset or the attitude that I want to share with people. I think it's about doing the best you can where you are. And I really mean doing the best you can. And so if that means you know, you need to listen to a podcast while you're mowing someone's lawn for some extra money for your grass-fed beef, or not even grass-fed beef. You do it. So anyway, I digress.
I get it. I get it. So let's say some of our listeners have no clue what paleo is. Like, give us your version of what is a day in the life of someone who's eating paleo.
Okay, so what the basics of paleo are is it's eating real, whole, nutrient-dense foods and avoiding processed, refined, man-made foods. So what we're looking at are meat, vegetables, eggs, nuts and seeds, some fruit, and that's the essence of the paleo diet. Healthy fats, all of that. Avoiding primarily grains, legumes, dairy, and added sugars. And so a day in the life, I have 14 30-day meal plans in Practical Paleo. So if anybody wants to walk through exactly what to eat for 30 days, but we can look at something like eggs and bacon with some potatoes and kale for breakfast. And, we do that in like a skillet, for example, cooking that up however you want to have your eggs is cool. However you want to cook them is cool. You want to fry them, you want to poach them, you want to scramble them. That's a great breakfast. For lunch, something like a big salad with a piece of salmon and maybe some oven fries are a big thing that I've been making lately. We've been doing some, potatoes cut up and they're baked with seasoning and a little bit of ghee, something like that, ghee is a clarified butter. It's taking out the dairy proteins and leaving you with just the nutrient-dense butter oil. And it's very tolerant to high heat cooking. So it's a good choice for cooking fat. And then for dinner, something that looks pretty similar to lunch, some kind of roasted vegetables. Maybe we're doing like some sweet potato with that and some kind of protein. Maybe it's steak or pork chop or grilled chicken breast or something like that, but pretty much meat and vegetables. I mean, I'm constantly posting meals on Instagram if people are like, what are you really eating all the time? I post a lot of things on Instagram all the time too.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's Diane.practicalpaleo.
Excellent.
So you can, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I love that. I love checking out what other people are eating and then getting the ideas. Cause I get in those like food ruts where I'm like, okay, my husband and I for a long time have been sort of keto paleo. So, we cut out the sugars, and that was like talk about the sugar withdrawals. I mean, there's a good like 7-day detox there. We thought we were going to kill someone, but we got through it, and then we felt so good. We're like, man, we're never eating sugar again. This is great. I couldn't believe it. It was such a shift. Cutting out dairy, which is difficult because all your favorite junk foods have dairy in it. So there's those cravings, but I managed to make once in a while when I want chocolate, I make that coconut oil mixed with avocado, mixed with raw cacao, mixed with stevia, and blend it all together and make like a chocolate mousse.
I have a recipe for that in Practical Paleo. Yeah.
I've been playing with the ratios, and then I make a really big batch, like 9 to 12 avocado batch, and it lasts us all week. And that's actually sometimes a meal. Yeah. Because it's so filling, because there's so much healthy fat in it. So we've been experimenting and figuring out how we can stay within the parameters of whole foods. Not the grocery store, but the eating whole foods. But man, we keep falling into these ruts. It's like we eat the same meal, every day. And then like, I pretty much get into this rut where I'm just always wrapping some kind of meat in kale. And it's like, that's the only vegetable I have apparently. That are like, I always have kale, or I always have one thing. And then we get so bored. So, you've got these, how many meal plans do you have?
Well, there are 14 meal plans, but they have different purposes. So you wouldn't follow each one of them. They're not all different meal plans. They're actually for different populations. But I wanted to just backtrack before we get into that really quickly, because we were talking about what are the basics of paleo. And I know that your listeners particularly may be interested also in things that are gluten-free. And paleo is naturally gluten-free. So I did want to mention that. It's just by nature, if you find something that's a paleo recipe, it's going to be gluten-free. And we can talk about this a little bit later, but you mentioned something like avoiding dairy and, how hard it is. I do have some things to say about, like, do you need to be strict paleo for forever? It's a lot of what I did in the update to Practical Paleo, where I'm talking about how to take it from, do I do this for 30 days, 60, 90 days, 6 months, a year? Do I do this for forever? Giving people a little bit more information on that, because I feel really strongly along the lines of empowerment, not to be dogmatic. And like, once you see that it's beneficial, realizing that this could be something you stick with 100% for the rest of your life and you'll be just fine. But do you need to? Does everybody need to? Maybe, maybe not. There are some people that may be able to reintroduce some healthy whole foods that just aren't considered paleo. But just because cavemen didn't eat it doesn't mean it can't find a place in your diet. But I think that we need to reestablish some, a ground level of what we're looking at as food, because as you mentioned, if you went paleo and you went keto, like at some point, I just always use this example. At some point, we all realized as adults that Twinkies are not food. Like, there was a point when you have this revelation that you're in a gas station and most of what's in there is not food, including the Twinkies. So this is just not something you pick up and eat anymore, which I think most adults who are interested in eating healthfully have that happen at some point, right? Whatever the food is for you that you used to eat that you now look at and you're like, no, that's not even on my radar. Well, I think that can happen with a lot of healthy paleo foods that, or healthy foods that maybe aren't considered paleo that we might want to reintroduce, like dairy from well-raised animals. I think it can have a place for some people, maybe not for everyone. So you were asking about the meal plans. The meal plans in the book are all different depending on the type of goal or health condition that you're looking to support. So whether it's you're new to paleo and you use the squeaky clean plan, you're interested in fat loss or athletic performance, perhaps, maybe you're dealing with a ton of stress and you want the adrenal health stress management plan, healthy hormones, all kinds of different conditions. And it's not about curing anything. It's about, again, back to that empowerment to support yourself through nutrition, support your body through nutrition, and talking about diet and lifestyle recommendations as well as the food. Because the food is honestly, to me, I wouldn't say it's the least important part, because obviously I have a book all about nutrition and what to eat. But if anyone's going to pick up a meal plan, it's those diet and lifestyle recommendations are really at the core, because changing your food, taking a supplement, like that stuff all helps. But if you're still living in the way that's pushing you down, the bad path, that's what we need to pull back on. Like, if your problem is stress, but you're not giving up all of these high stress activities that you're doing, well, it doesn't really matter what you eat, because your entire lifestyle is pushing you down the wrong path. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for me as a holistic practitioner, that's what I want people to know, is that obviously the food is really important. You can't change your stress levels and be eating Twinkies and Ho-Hos and Pop-Tarts and expect your body to respond positively. We need to put the right fuel in, but we also need to support that,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. You're looking at the holistic approach. And like Dr. Molly Niedermeyer, naturopath that we've had on the show, she has said in some videos that we recorded with her that I can give you all the diet and supplements in the world, but if your house is mm-hmm. right beside a really busy highway and you're breathing in all these, particulates every day, that is going to that's going to stunt your growth. There's mm-hmm. no amount of diet, like there's no amount of supplements that's going to like counteract breathing right. pollution every day. Or if you live in an abusive relationship, that also is really dampening your health. And no matter what you do with your diets or supplements or exercise, you're not going to be emotionally healthy. So you've got to look at everything, every aspect of life and adjust. But if we can do something simple, especially I feel like a lot of us out there feel like we're so busy, life's out of control. Food is something we can control. Food mm-hmm. is something that's the one thing we get to choose every day is what we eat. And so we can choose to cut out the sugar. And those are the things that are in our control. Maybe we can't control deadlines, or maybe we can't control the short-term things that are stressing us out, but we can eliminate the food stressors. Because when we eat, Lucky Charms or whatever, red dye number, whatever, Twizzlers, right. the stress that that puts on our body. Or, I mean, chips out there. I cannot believe how many, like Doritos, like they as MSG. MSG is a neurotoxin.
I know.
MSG is linked to seizures and brain cancer, and it's in chips that I see people feeding their 5-year-olds. It is like I cry when I see that, and that is putting a chemical, artificial chemical toxic load on your body, on our bodies, that it doesn't need to be there. That stressor doesn't need to be there. So I absolutely agree. And I love that you started out, motivated about wanting to look into what can prevent cancer. My mom died of liver cancer, and I think everyone knows someone who has had cancer or passed away from cancer, and this is just a disease that is growing out of control, and we don't really have the root cause yet. We have a lot of
because there's not going to be one. Right. It's basically a disease of our society.
Yeah, lifestyle, environment.
There is not just one. And it's not to say like each person is to blame for their own development of it. But like what you were saying about the toxins by the side of the highway, there are many people for whom that load will never be a problem. And there are many people for whom any of that is a problem. Mm-hmm. And we all have a different constitution. We all have different genetic makeup to some degree. Obviously, as human animals, we're the same, but we have different things that we can handle and not handle just by the way our body detoxifies things, by the way that we handle stress for a myriad of different reasons that we handle it differently. And I think that when you're talking about eating junk food and how that doesn't support our body 100%, but part of it is nutritionally not giving ourselves the right fuel. Part of it is outsourcing the one thing that's most important, and that's our health. Like when we don't cook or prepare or think through our own food. Now I'm saying, what if you do go into a store like Whole Foods? We're talking about Whole Foods in general, not always the store, right? But if you do go into that store and you seek out the healthiest options you can find that might be prepared because maybe you don't have time to cook tonight. Okay, so that's fair, right? But you're being thoughtful about it. I think most of the time, folks want to outsource that responsibility because then if something happens, like it's not my fault. And so what I think we need to take more seriously is that we are responsible for ourselves, regardless of the hand we've been dealt, what we've been born into as our own body. We all have different struggles, but given that, we each have to be in control of that. And so the more we don't cook for ourselves or be thoughtful about our choices and what we are putting into our bodies, the more we absolve ourselves of that responsibility of our own health. And so I think outsourcing that becomes really dangerous. And that's what we've done by not cooking and not being thoughtful about our food. And that's something that changes in people, not just when you go paleo. See, the thing about paleo that makes it really different from a lot of other, just ways of eating in general is that all of a sudden, you're sort of forced, whether you do it overnight, like I talk about this in the book too, you can do it from today to tomorrow if you want, or you can do it in baby steps. I'll show you what to do first and next and so on. But you almost give up like everything you were eating, if that makes sense. You do and you don't. You shift from cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, and pasta for dinner, at least that's what I used to eat back in the day, to foods that perhaps you've eaten these meals, what I described to you earlier about, what does a day look like? Everyone's eaten those meals in some way, right? Like a salad with fish or meat and roasted veggies and a potato. Like people have eaten that. They may just not have put that all together in one day and excluded the other stuff. So it's not that crazy. It's just that when we're no longer eating these categories of food that maybe aren't the most nutrient dense, it's a big change. And that's hard for people, but that actually kind of shakes your body into some of the best changes. And you saw that when you basically went and cut out sugar. I mean, that is the first step for a lot of people. But I propose that people change the fats that they're eating first, that people make an oil change, because if there's one thing that your listeners take away from this episode, regardless of whether or not you want to go paleo, because I'm basically indifferent. Of course, I'm going to try and convince people like do this, but I'm not interested in convincing someone who doesn't have an interest in paleo. I just want people to be healthier, bottom line, whatever that means for them. And not eating vegetable oil, corn, canola, soybean oil, not eating that stuff, especially not in your home. You're going to get exposed to it at a restaurant, regardless of how careful you are. But not buying those things and bringing them into your home is like step one. Baseline, everybody can do that. I don't care what else you're eating, whether you're eating plant-based paleo, standard American diet. We can all get the canola, the soybean, the vegetable oil, the Crisco, all that stuff out of the house and change it out for natural fats, not man-made fats.
And so what fats do you recommend?
So some of the best fats are going to be olive oil, which is the PC fat, I call it. Like nobody has beef with olive oil for the most part. But that's a really great fat. I recommend being careful about sourcing it. Trying to find one that you can see when it's pressed and packed is really important. But olive oil, I love ghee, which is, as I mentioned before, clarified butter. You want to get that ideally from a grass-fed source, but if you can't, that's okay. I love any kind of animal fats that are naturally occurring. So like chicken fat, lamb fat, beef fat, it's going to come off of the meat as you're cooking it, depending on the type of meat that you buy. If you do buy the grass-fed pastured meat, don't throw away that fat. Like your great grandmother is turning over in her grave if you're getting rid of that fat. That's expensive quality stuff, and she wants you to use it. You buy pastured bacon, cook your potatoes in that fat. Do not throw that away. That is liquid gold right there. Those are all pretty healthy. We're looking at cold pressed avocado oil is a decent fat. Cold pressed nut and seed oils. We are avoiding the types of fats that need chemical processing like canola and soybean oil. So I have a whole guide to healthy fats. People can get it on my website. If you go to balancedbites.com/practicalpaleo, there's a link there to say you want the resources from the book, and we'll just email those to you. It's a whole bunch of free PDFs that people can get, but it's also in the book in Practical Paleo. I have both a guide to just healthy fats and then a guide to cooking fats where I rank them by which are the best for cooking based on how stable they are to damage from heat. And then also, which you just never want to use. So hopefully that, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, Dr. Wallach says he's actually talk about the PC olive oil.
And coconut oil. Sorry.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Coconut oil. Absolutely.
I feel like that's a given. But
yeah, exactly. Everyone thinks paleo coconut oil, but so Dr. Wallach actually is against olive oil. So you can put him on the list of the only person out there who's against it. He's a naturopathic doctor, and he says that be really careful about using oils because the second oxygen hits an oil, it starts to go rancid, and so his concern is consuming those free radicals.
Yeah,
the radical damage.
I'm with him on that. Originally, I used to have people really avoid cooking with olive oil, which I still generally am kind of on that end of things. I do like for people to cook with more fats that are primarily saturated fats versus unsaturated fats. And I get into this more in that cooking fats chart. But olive oil does have some interesting properties where it does have vitamin E and polyphenols and some of the properties that do give it the rich taste and the color that if you're getting a quality olive oil, there are components built into the oil, just like when we're eating whole fish, for example, if we're eating omega-3 rich fish, those fatty acids are protected by the whole food from being damaged as easily as something like a fish oil. Like I don't recommend a fish oil supplement because of this reason that this doctor is talking about, that that stuff is damaged very, very easily, especially something like fish oil, which is rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. The more unsaturated, the less stable. So the more susceptible it is to damage through light, heat, and air. So for sure, the cooking fats chart takes that into consideration. The most stable fats are the most saturated. It's not really just about that smoke point that a lot of people are looking at. They're looking at that degree, that temperature degree. And I'm first ranking them by what's the most percentage-wise of that fat, which one has the highest amount of saturated fat, and then ranking them down from there. partially based on saturated, monounsaturated, then polyunsaturated, and then looking at their smoke point. So if two fats are equal in terms of their saturation, mono and polyunsaturation, then where's the smoke point? And the one with the higher smoke point ends up on the top of the chart versus the bottom. But then I also am basically just sort of kicking to the bottom of the chart, fats and oil. It's going to be oils that are produced through means that are just completely unnatural. And I think as soon as they're bottled, they're not healthy. Like, it doesn't matter what you do with them, you shouldn't be eating them ever. So that's kind of also taken into consideration in this chart. So this is where I'm talking about, your canola oils and things like that. I do have things like sesame seed oil, which really doesn't have a great profile for cooking, but using it cold pressed after cooking as a seasoning can be delicious and, not the worst thing to do. But that's kind of how I categorize things in the cooking fats chart, where coconut oil really does come out on top, butter and ghee. Cocoa butter actually is pretty highly rated. Tallow, which is beef fat. Palm oil from a sustainable source, of course. Lard or bacon fat, and then duck fat, and then so on from there. It's mostly going to be animal fats with the exception of coconut oil, because we know coconut oil is so saturated.
I love it. Now, why should we make sure we incorporate healthy fats into our diet? What does it do for us?
So a couple of different things. Number one of the categories of nutrients I think a lot of people are pretty deficient in if we look at our diets, but also, I don't think most people are not getting enough fat in their diet. I mean, I think people are just perhaps getting the wrong fat, but fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K are really tough for us to get in nutrition unless we're paying attention to where to find those. Liver is an extremely rich source of vitamin A, and most people are not chowing down on liver these days. Egg yolks, lard is also another good source of vitamin D, for example, but they're all fat soluble, meaning we have to eat them in or with fat in order for our body to absorb them properly. So that's kind of one reason why we do need to have these healthy fats in our diet, so we can absorb that stuff. But our cell membranes are made up partially of the fats that we're eating. I mean, fats will incorporate into our cells, and the turnover rate, I don't know the exact timing of it, but it's not quick. If we're incorporating unhealthy fats into our diet, and as you mentioned before, sometimes the unhealthy component of that is that they're oxidized or damaged, and that's part of what causes that free radical damage. I'm saying with like finger quotes that people don't really know what that means. It just means your body has to fight this stuff off with more antioxidants, more free radical fighting components, things like vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals that we're getting from healthy foods that can help to fight that stuff. But when you combine unhealthy fats with other unhealthy foods, you have no way to fight that. You're not getting enough vitamin C to help fight the fact that there's this oxidation coming into the body that we don't do well with that stuff. That's what really does lead to some, disease paths. So anyway, getting a bit off track. But that's really at the core of eating healthy fats. Part of the other thing is that, as you're describing with your avocado pudding mousse, satiety is huge. People are not eating a lot of fat. They're eating a lot of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and then they're hungry all the time, having to reach again for more food. And it doesn't tend to be protein and fat. It tends to be carbohydrate and maybe some fat. And so if we want to feel satiated all day, we don't want to be eating every minute because we feel like we can't ever get our hunger to stop or the cravings to stop. Then healthy fats are really what's going to support that and just kind of keep you full all day.
Exactly. I actually am surprised at how quickly I get full on eating this way. Now, so in terms of macronutrients, you covered fats. Go over proteins. Why grass-fed?
There's so many reasons. And, I will say this, what I have in Practical Paleo is what I I would not call it an indefensive paleo. So what I don't do in the book is go through like all of the quote rules of paleo and why you should follow them, because it's not my personality. I want to teach you how your body should work, how your blood sugar should be regulated, how your digestion should work. And then I propose these are the foods that you eat to get there. But it's just not my way to say like, this is why you should eat this and to the exclusion of anything else, if that makes sense. But in terms of grass-fed, look, all animals should really be eating their natural diet. Beef, cows are made to eat grass 100%. There is not really any reason for them to eat something else. Hay would be also grass that's just been dried and stored in the winter when cows maybe can't be on fresh green pasture, because sometimes, seasonally they can't in certain areas of the country. But that's their appropriate diet. That's what keeps them the healthiest. The same way we look at paleo, avoiding processed refined foods keeps us the healthiest as human animals. And so, we want to eat animals that have eaten as close to their natural diet as possible. It keeps them healthier. Their nutritional profile is better when they're eating their natural diet. The same way our blood work is better when we're eating a diet of real foods. So if you look at grass-fed beef, it'll be richer in CLA, which is an anti-inflammatory, sometimes known as like an anti-cancer fatty acid. We'll have more omega-3 than conventional beef, and it'll actually taste like beef. It tends to be leaner naturally, so you are getting some of these healthy fats, but it does tend to be leaner naturally. When you see beef that's heavily marbled, for the most part, that's going to be conventionally raised grain-fed beef. You can find some grass-fed cuts that have some marbling, but not a lot. They just tend to be naturally leaner because we haven't fattened them up on grains.
Right. We weren't force feeding them a bunch of GMO corn.
I don't know if it's force feeding either, because quite frankly, it's probably like, Twinkies and Pop-Tarts to them. It's probably really good, but it can make them sick. And then, they're given antibiotics and whatever else. So, it's ideally we are eating grass-fed beef. And if we feel like it's too expensive at the grocery store, then we buy from a local farmer. It's going to be way, way less expensive. You can get steaks and chops and all kinds of great cuts at a way lower price. We don't need to be paying $30 a pound for that stuff.
Every time I go to reach for a conventionally raised beef, that number sticks in my mind, that like that ratio. It was something, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like there's 20 times more omega-6, versus omega-3 in the conventionally raised. Like there's a lot more, just like you were talking about, and that omega-6, if you have it out of the 1-to-1 ratio of the omega-3, is pro-inflammatory. And if someone's inflamed systemically, they just wake up in the morning with aches and they don't feel good, and their joints are achy and their immune system might be low compromised, and there's just that actually can lead to allergies and food allergies, that systemic inflammation. And so I always just pay like the $3 more and grab the grass-fed, because I go to a grocery store where there's organic grass-fed, then just grass-fed, and they're sort of varying in prices. So right. For the most part, I'll go for the middle. It's like, hey, I know it's a bit more expensive, and sometimes I'll get the organic grass-fed, but for the most part, it's only a few bucks more, and I know I'm saving myself a lot of money not eating Twinkies. So so much savings there. So definitely. And then so that's so paleo is okay with pretty much any animal protein. Or is there any animal proteins that paleo is not okay with?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
So I have a guide to food quality also in Practical Paleo. So if people are exactly what you just mentioned, if you're at the store and you feel like, well, what's the best and what's like, what shouldn't I buy? Is there one that I should try and avoid? I give you in the book, what's the baseline, like pretty much start here. Or with seafood, I really don't recommend farm-raised seafood. There are a lot of great options, even at like Target, and I believe some Walmarts might even have frozen, which is fine, totally fine to have it, frozen, wild-caught fish or shellfish, things like that. We can find that stuff and it can be fairly affordable. We can do it from, canned salmon, things like that are fine. But I give you the baseline, the good, the better, and the best. And it's kind of do what you can with what you have. You don't have to buy the best of everything. It's okay. I buy plenty of, organic eggs and not pastured eggs. If I am not at the store that has the pastured eggs, like it's okay. I'm going to be okay. But the guide helps you to just see, like, what are we looking at in terms of hierarchy? And when I talk about where to prioritize your spending, I want people to prioritize it on healthy fats, then proteins, then carbohydrates, which will be veggies and fruits. So if you're trying to say, I only have X amount to spend, then you're buying healthy fats, you're buying the coconut oil, or you're getting a really high quality olive oil, which I have a brand that I always recommend because it's a friend of mine, his company. And, I can tell you or not, I don't need to pimp his oil, but I can, I can share it with you whenever. But I visited where it's from in Greece and it's imported. And for me, that's important. I don't want to get it at the store. Like, I'll get something that does cost a little bit more because I know how important that is to my overall health in terms of keeping inflammation down. Like, fats are really important. So we want to spend on fats first, spend on proteins second in terms of priority, and then carbohydrates third. And that's where we can look at the Environmental Working Group puts out what's called, I think it's called the Clean 15 now. Mm-hmm. And maybe if it's still the Dirty Dozen, where they tell you the produce that the 12 items of produce that will be the most heavily sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. And they tend to be things with a thin skin, like a strawberry or berries and things like that. Typically not something like avocado or cantaloupe or something with a thicker skin. It does vary a little bit year to year, but mostly it kind of stays pretty consistent. And we don't have to buy everything organic. You can buy the conventional stuff, buy it in season. Maybe you want to avoid strawberries if you're concerned about toxin load and pesticide load and you can't afford what's organic. But chances are you can afford the organic when they're in season because they are not going to be super expensive. But don't go buying strawberries in January and tell me that they're too expensive because of course they're expensive. They're not growing anywhere. And they're definitely not growing locally in this country, almost anywhere except perhaps Southern California. So.
Right. I think it's crazy when I see in the wintertime, fruit from Peru or Argentina. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that apple had to fly here. Like,
and that's where the money is going too. When people are saying, I can't afford it, it's too expensive. Like, when the season comes that you have a farmer's market, shop at the farmer's market, shop late at the farmer's market when people want to get rid of their stuff. They don't want to pack it back up. You can get the best deals. This is the kind of stuff that I share all the time too. When it comes to like, what do I share with folks on my emailing list or people follow me on Instagram? Like, I'm basically sharing little things about what I eat, but then every week it's some kind of little, it's a tip. Like, I try and give people why I'm eating something or what I'm finding at the farmer's market or what's this little tip. And I think people learn a lot just through that process where it's very organically done. Like, I'm sharing my life and then I try and share some of the rationale as to like, well, today we didn't get to the farmer's market early. So unfortunately I didn't get some of the, cuts that I like from this farmer, but here's what I did get. I got 5 bunches of kale for $3,
Nice.
Yeah.
That's an awesome deal. Very cool. Now, a question's come up in my mind that you have these different meal plans based on the goals that they want to achieve. What's the difference between them? Like, what's the biggest difference? For example, one person that wants to lose weight versus the athlete.
So I will say this, the differences in the food in the meal plans is nuanced. So you might flip through them and see meals that are really similar from day to day because 80 to 90% of the time, the food itself is the same. There are foods in the athletic performance plan, for example, a lot more of the dense carbohydrate foods, because if you're an athlete, you might need more carbohydrates. Generally, there are a few types of athletic endeavors that don't need as much carbohydrate. And I'm not talking hundreds and hundreds of grams a day, but because I am athletic, I know how it feels to do that stuff with and without the carbs. And I'm talking healthy, whole food carbs here. But nuances like that, where there might be something added to the plan, there might be different sides, there might be different veggies. The proteins tend to be pretty similar because, again, like we're working from a base of just real regular food. So the other reason why I wanted to keep the plans they're all based from one master and then edited from there. So let's just say you and your husband both wanted to follow a plan but had different goals.
Ah.
You're not like 100% on different pages, literally and figuratively. There are some core elements that are similar. You may just add blueberries and he may add a potato, something where you're not getting as much carb if you don't want it for whatever your goal is. Or maybe there's a certain meal plan where cantaloupe melon is included more for nutrients in the cantaloupe, that with this health condition, you want to get more of that and it's not as critical for someone else. And those are nuanced, and you might not see them until you really dig in and go to shop for them. And we do have shopping lists that will be available on the website as well, because I know people always ask about it, but you hit a point where you're at 480 pages of a book and you just can't add more pages. And I don't think I think shopping lists are better to just print anyway. You can just keep reprinting them to use. But anyway, so that was something that when I first wrote the book in 2011, I was like, this is kind of weird because the meal plans don't vary that much, just little things that I'm editing based on the foods I want people to be eating or avoiding. And then I realized as people were going through and they were concerned that they were following different plans, I was like, you don't need to be worried because you're not going to be, I'm eating beef, you're eating shrimp. It's not to that degree most of the time. There are some plans that do have a lot more variation. The plan I have for autoimmunity does have more variation because we eliminate eggs from the plan. We also eliminate nightshades, which are tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplant, including like red pepper spices. We also exclude nuts and seeds, which I don't have tons of that stuff in the book, but some. So that plan does have more variation. And that's also the plan I point people to who are allergic to eggs or want to avoid eggs for breakfast because they can't eat them. They can read through the breakfasts that are in that plan to get ideas. And then the cancer recovery plan has a lot less red meat, not because I think red meat is a problem, but because most people who are going through cancer recovery are told not to eat as much red meat.
Right.
So I wanted to create a plan that wasn't going to be sort of combative, just not work with what they're told when they leave the doctor's office. So I really wanted that to be supportive in that way. And so that's why that plan is that way. So different things like that. I'm really thoughtful about everything. You might find, who knows, you might find something, look, 14 meal plans and 30-day plans for all of it. You might find something on one and be like, wait, what is, am I supposed to eat that food? But it's there, it's all there. And I've thought through it for you.
Very cool. And so you're also including like for cancer, I imagine you'd increase antioxidants, or for the autoimmune, you'd increase antioxidants. Did you?
Right. So yeah, each plan, the way that they're created, I kind of explain a little bit about the plan. I talk about diet and lifestyle recommendations. So things you're adding and things you're avoiding. And some of them are perhaps more obvious than others. Like sometimes people don't think about, you mentioned this earlier, toxic relationships or people, negative emotions, things like that. I mean, I talk about that stuff in here because people need to hear it, in the things to avoid, for example, if you're dealing with high stress.
Yep.
I talk about nutritional supplements and herbs to consider. It's not prescriptive. It's more, here are some things you can consider. Mostly for the supplements, it's kind of, if you're working with a naturopath, they might recommend some of these. And I want people to know what they're doing, what those things do in the body, because I used to have clients come to me with like a bag of supplements and they didn't know what they were for or why they were taking them. That's kind of what that's for. And then supportive nutrients and foods that contain them. So if we're talking about zinc, for example, and I want you to get zinc and explain that it's a potent antioxidant and tell you where you can get it. Now, keep in mind that the recipes in the book are made to be approachable, and they're not all created as super therapeutic recipes, if that makes sense. Like some of them are more therapeutic than others. I've got a bacon and superfood meatloaf that's got liver in it and it tastes really good. You won't taste the liver. And that's included in almost all of the meal plans. But I have to kind of walk the line between food that's got a clinical application, which all of the food is real, healthy, nutrient-dense food, and something that's appealing. Like I'm not just put it together because it's clinically appropriate for stress management. I'm not just going to throw together these 3 ingredients because they're so rich in these things. Like I'm going to make it regular, real food. That's where in the meal plan, I might mention a side dish or a vegetable for you to eat that's like bok choy and it's for a specific reason versus spinach. It's got different nutrients or different properties to it. So there's there's a lot, but that's the meal plans. When I say meal plan, the calendar of food is it's sort of the least important in a way. Like you don't actually have to follow that calendar of food if you don't want to. I really need you to read the rest of it and make sure that you're following along with that. I give you a quick list of foods that you can pick from, but you can really eat most of the stuff that's in the book, most of the recipes in the book, and you'll be fine.
Love it. It's really exciting. So your second edition is coming out really soon, September 6th. Gosh, that's just around the corner.
Wait.
How many weeks do you think you'll spend on the New York Times bestseller list this time? Or you want to beat your 97
No,
weeks?
no. Actually, nothing like that. So just, from a logistical standpoint, I'm releasing a hardcover and a softcover edition. So it's actually going to be really tough to make that list because I'm releasing 2 books at once. So I'm splitting sales between 2 editions, and I actually don't know that it will make the list. It's not really my priority. I mean, the book was on the list for it was 2 years or in 3 separate years. And it's not the most important thing right now. This book has already been on the list. It's more important to me to release a book that is as relevant today as it was when I first released it, that it's as much of the resource as it's always been. People call it the Paleo Bible. It's like the one book. If you're going to get one book on paleo, this is the book that you get. Not my words, it's really their words. And, it's been 4 years since the first edition came out. So, you can understand that there's some new things to say or different ways to say things and different ways I wanted to support people who, even people who had the first edition, this book is so different. I've added probably the equivalent of about 100 pages of content. Although it's 50 pages in print, we changed the format of the book. We changed so much about it to fit more content in there. And, I wanted to release it in a hardcover. I don't know. I feel like it has to have been done before, but nobody releases a book in paperback and then releases a hardcover. Like that's just not a traditional publishing route that anybody goes. But I pretty much don't do anything in a traditional way. So I said to the publisher, if we are revising this, my readers, especially the ones who want a second updated edition, like they've been asking me for a hardcover book. This has always been a really big book. It was 432 pages to begin with. Now it's 480. It's like a textbook. And to be able to have something that's really sturdy and can be on your kitchen counter or, a reference for, like a lot of naturopaths use it as a reference book. A lot of nutritionists use it as a reference book with their clients. I wanted something that would be really substantial in that way. And the hardcover is that. So long answer to a short question of, any kind of New York Times expectation. I don't know what would happen with that, but that's not really the goal at this point. It's just to provide the best resource and be personally the most proud of it that I can be, and also the most confident with what I'm teaching people, that it's the most relevant and updated, even down to things like the USDA recommendations have changed, right? 2015 was the most recent release. And so I talk about that in the book. I address what the government is telling you and what's really true because it's not always the same. And that's changed in the book because there are new recommendations. And to the positive side, they've dropped any kind of notes about cholesterol because they've realized that dietary cholesterol has no impact on serum or blood levels of cholesterol. So, I did make that note in the book, but all that kind of information. So I'm super excited about it. Really, honestly, I feel like the people who've been continuing to buy the book regularly, I didn't revise it because it slowed down selling and I wanted to like do something. No, we actually pulled thousands of books off the shelf and for months haven't been selling it because I wanted to revise it. We had to just pull the plug at some point to get the new one out because it's just important to me that this book is such a freight train that it's still out there and so many people are getting it every week. And I really needed that book to be the best representation that it could be so that people today are still getting, I mean, that's just me as a person. I want people to have my best.
Oh, that's great that you, when you knew you were going to release your second edition, that you stopped selling the first one because you're probably thinking, I don't want some person to buy it and then the next day my new one comes out and they missed out.
So what happened? I mean, it's still out there. Like we can't get, thousands of stores to pull it from the shelf because they're not going to do that because it is still selling. But Amazon ran out of stock a while ago and we didn't restock them. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's a huge place that folks are getting the book. So anyway, really exciting. I'm starting a tour, so I'll be on a nationwide tour for most of September. So if folks are curious, want to come to an event, come meet me. I would love to meet you all over the country. And all those details are on my website. There's an events page at balancebites.com.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited about your book. Tell us a bit about the other things you do. You've got the 21-day sugar detox.
Just a few other things.
Just a few.
Yeah. The 21-day sugar. Yeah, the 21-day sugar detox is a program that I wrote back in 2010, and it's been since published in. There are two books. There's a book and a cookbook, and the guidebook has all the information about the program as well as recipes, and then the cookbook just has recipes. It doesn't have all the background on the program. And there's an online program. So I believe you probably have a link for that for your listeners for the online program as well. And it's an amazing program. Some people do that before they go paleo. Some people go paleo and then find, I'm not really sure how many, but some people still find that they're, diving face first into a bag of dried mango and they're having sugar cravings. But a lot of people do it before they go paleo. It's kind of their entry point because it's not strict paleo, the program, but it does help you really get away from sugary things, sweet foods. You do have to stop drinking alcohol for 3 weeks, which for a lot of people is really tough. And it's a wonderful program. I have certified coaches for that program. So if people need help, can get all that information on the website.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. We will absolutely have a link, learntruehealth.com/sugar. Will just be the easiest link for people to go to. I could not believe the shift that happened when I cut sugar out, and I have the biggest sweet tooth. So I'm such a believer in doing a sugar detox. Now, I actually just interviewed a guy who his whole premise, he has an online program. The only thing he does, it's super powerful, is he gets people to stop drinking alcohol for a month. And then he gives them life tips. And it's not even about being an alcoholic. It's just people drink socially. But there's if you pay attention to it, a huge shift that happens in your mental clarity, in your stamina, in your energy when you simply don't drink alcohol for a month. And so he's been doing this program for years, and it's absolutely phenomenal that something so stupidly simple and it can be so profound. So that's great that's obviously one of the things people have to do for 21 days to detox. They have to stop drinking alcohol. In your program, obviously you tell people what to eat, what not to eat, but do you help people with the mindset to overcome the complications that arise when people, hit the wall?
A little bit. I go through what to expect day by day for 21 days. And so that is where I address that. Like, I know how you're going to feel. I know that days 3 through 7 are the worst with sugar and carb withdrawals because that's when your body's natural storage of glycogen is actually depleted after those few days and you haven't put a lot more in. So it's going to be painful. There's a real physiological reason for that. And I've also been running that program for over 6 years. And so I know what people are going to go through. I know exactly what to expect. And so we do prepare you, if you read through that preparation checklist and you read through the what to expect day by day, like, what's coming for sure.
Awesome. Well, it sounds really exciting. Definitely recommend my listeners check it out. If you haven't cut sugar out or done a detox yet, definitely go to learnchild.com/sugar and check it out. Now, I'd love for you to give our listeners a challenge, something they can do now and for the next 7 days, something they can do every day for the next 7 days to see a shift in their health.
Where do I start? So I think I'm going to have this be for the 7 days, because I don't think you have to do something progressively each day, but I'm going to give you guys the first step that I was mentioning in this guide to going paleo, or not, you know, even if you don't want to go paleo, but I think this is what everyone does need to start with to be healthier in terms of your nutrition. And that was the opt for an oil change. So looking out for all of these unhealthy fats that I'm talking about: vegetable oil, corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, getting rid of that stuff. So if you've got something like margarine or non-butter, dairy-free spread in the refrigerator, if you've got vegetable oil because maybe you baked something and you bought this bottle, if you're cooking with it because someone on the Food Network told you to. I love the Food Network as much as the next person, but they are not on the tip to get rid of the canola oil at this point. If you're shopping at Whole Foods and you're buying pre-made foods at the hot bar and it's got canola oil in it, I just want everyone to open their eyes to where this stuff is. Get it out of your house. Avoid it at the grocery store. Avoid it if you turn a package around and you're reading the ingredients. So that's really where I want you to start. So I'm going to list it out again: vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, Crisco or other butter-like spreads, and anything hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. That's what we're getting rid of. We're looking for that on our labels, and we're replacing it with real butter, preferably grass-fed if we can. Replacing it with extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, animal fats from pastured animals if we can, coconut oil. That's where we're going with it. Real fats.
My favorite ghee is, I got it on Amazon. I can put the link in the show notes. It's this giant jar. So, because I hate it when I go to the store, I buy a tiny jar of ghee and I used it in 2 days. I'm like, oh my God, it's $10.
Especially if you're eating low carb. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Giant jar lasts me forever. Huge jar of ghee. It is 100% natural, and it's called Eat Good Fat. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about this ghee?
I have. I've seen so many, and it's just a great, it's also a great way to get that buttery flavor without the dairy proteins. And there are different brands out there, and some of them may or may not be like purely certified as dairy free. I know some are. So for people who are sensitive to dairy, sometimes that's a good option, surprisingly, because it does get rid of the dairy proteins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No casein and no dairy protein. Yeah. No lactose.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to add that to the show notes, your list of the oils we need to remove. I remember one of the naturopaths I work with says that it's so important to eat organic nuts. If we're going to choose nuts, eat organic, because anything fat, like will hold, if they hold pesticides, it becomes easier for the body to absorb those pesticides, and then we store them in our fat in our fat deposits.
Yeah, especially if our liver is not working extremely well, which a lot of us, it's not, for various reasons. That's why losing a lot of fat quickly is often physically painful, because we're releasing a lot of toxins from that fat, and sometimes our body can't process it that quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show. I definitely recommend listeners listen to the Balance Bites podcast. You can get it on iTunes. Check out Diane's book, which we're rooting for a very long and healthy run on the New York Times bestseller list, just like your first edition. Very excited for Practical Paleo second edition coming out. And then, of course, we all want to get on your email list. Because balancebites.com, is there any particular page on your website to get to get all those wonderful goodies you would email us?
They're kind of all over the place, but the guides from Practical Paleo, if you go to balancebites.com and then under books, there's a landing page for Practical Paleo, or just balancebites.com/practical paleo. There's a big, I believe it's a red button that's like send me the guides, something to that effect. I also have a healthy shopping list that we send out. I send out so many fun, useful things for my emailing list that I really try and make it helpful every week, whether I'm just kind of sharing a roundup of what's going on, but usually it's like a recipe or a video with tips, something really helpful so that you can kind of stay looped in.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, I look forward to getting out of my food funk and finding some new things that I can infuse into my diet, because I'm like, all I eat is kale apparently.
You will love it.
I'm
Lots
so
of low
excited.
carb recipes for you.
Yes, fantastic. Excellent, Diane. Thank you so much for being on the show. Definitely want to have you back when you release more of your wonderful books and programs.
Sounds good.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our fantastic true health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.